I've always been the one who kept conversations alive, the kind of person who could strike up chatter with a stranger in a grocery line or fill silence before it ever had a chance to settle. My husband, Daniel, was nothing like that. He spoke only when he felt his words mattered. Some people admired that. Most didn't know what to make of it. When we got married, my family teased him constantly. During the reception, my brother raised his glass and joked, "Does he ever say a full sentence?" I forced a laugh, even though it stung. Daniel just offered his small, gentle smile, lifted his drink and murmured, "Quiet moments say more than loud ones." Everyone chuckled. I didn't get it back then. As the years passed, the teasing never stopped. If anything, it got more creative. Friends would nudge me at parties and ask, "Maya, are you sure Daniel's actually here? Or is he your imaginary husband?" When he spoke slowly or thoughtfully, someone always had a snide remark ready. "Look at that, he does have a voice." And every time, I laughed with them. Not because it amused me, but because I was scared of being seen as overly defensive or sensitive. I didn't want to be that wife. Meanwhile, Daniel began to retreat, not from events themselves, but from joining in. He would sit beside me, listening with calm eyes and a distant expression. Sometimes he'd rest his hand lightly on my shoulder, a quiet reminder that he was there, but I never stopped to notice how often he was fading to the background of our life together. Then came the night everything shifted. At a small work gathering, after a few too many drinks, someone blurted out, "Daniel's the type of guy you forget exists." No wonder Maya does all the talking. She married a shadow. Laughter exploded around the table. I froze, wine glass halfway to my mouth. I didn't defend him. I didn't even frown. I just smiled mechanically, trying to blend in. Daniel didn't say a word. He simply looked at me, no anger, no hurt, just a kind of quiet awareness that made me feel worse than if he had yelled. His silence echoed louder than any insult. The next morning, he made breakfast like nothing had happened. He set my plate down with a gentleness that somehow felt like a boundary being drawn. "You're quiet today," I said. He gave a soft smile. "I've been quiet for years, Maya. You just didn't hear it." That sentence stayed with me. I saw him differently after that. How careful he was with his words, how patiently he waited before speaking, how rarely anyone truly listened to him. How rarely I did. A few weeks later, my parents invited us over. My dad, who adored Daniel but never really understood him, made an old joke from our wedding. Remember when everyone thought he couldn't talk? Maya could have married a statue and gotten more conversation. The table erupted in familiar laughter. Daniel calmly set down his fork, dabbed his mouth with a napkin, and said, "Funny how the loudest people often don't say much at all, and the quiet ones end up sorting through all the noise." Silence swept across the table. My mother froze. My brother's smile died instantly. I felt my breath catch. Daniel wasn't angry. He didn't raise his voice or glare. His tone was even, composed, almost gentle, and that made it land harder than anything else could have. "I don't mind the jokes," he added. "What I mind is when people confuse silence with emptiness. It's not emptiness. It's paying attention. And sometimes what we notice says more about others than they want it to." Then, as if he hadn't just dismantled the entire room, he continued eating. The rest of the dinner felt like everyone was tiptoeing across thin ice. At home, I hovered behind him as he washed dishes, feeling guilt sitting heavy in my chest. I didn't even know how to start apologizing. Finally, I whispered, "I think you embarrassed them." He looked over his shoulder and said quietly, "No, they embarrass themselves." I just stopped covering for them. That night, lying beside him, I replayed all the times I'd laughed along with the jokes. I had wanted him to be more expressive, more active, more like me, thinking loudness equaled confidence. But Daniel's calm wasn't insecurity. It was strength wrapped in softness. And I had missed it. In the following weeks, I found myself slowing down, pausing before jumping into conversations, noticing how often people spoke just to avoid stillness. How quickly they filled space with meaningless chatter. And for the first time, I understood why Daniel valued quiet. One evening, we had friends over, the same group who always used him as the punchline. Midway through the night, someone grinned and said, "Come on, Daniel, say something before we forget what your voice sounds like." The usual nervous laughter followed. But this time, before Daniel could respond, I spoke. He talks when he has something worth saying. You might not enjoy hearing it. The room fell silent instantly. Daniel didn't gloat, didn't smirk. He just met my eyes. And there was pride there. Not because I defended him, but because I finally saw him. After everyone left, I asked, "Did those jokes ever really bother you?" "Once," he admitted. "Until I realized people mock what they don't understand. They use noise to hide their discomfort. It stopped being about me a long time ago." He squeezed my hand gently. "You used to be uncomfortable with silence too." I smiled. "Not anymore." "Then you finally learned to listen." It wasn't a grand moment. It wasn't cinematic or poetic. It was just honest. And that honesty filled the space around us in a way that felt fuller than laughter ever had. Over time, I changed. I stopped rushing to fill every pause. I didn't feel the need to perform. I learned that silence isn't emptiness. It's clarity. It reveals who's at ease with themselves and who's terrified of fading into the background. People still talk too loudly. They still joke without kindness. But now, when the noise rises, I don't feel bothered. I just remember Daniel's words from years ago. The quiet moments tell the truth. He was right. They always did. And that one calm sentence didn't just still a noisy room. It reshaped the way I hear, the way I love, and the way I understand strength.